How to Do Stand-Up Comedy. Sobering Stand-Up by Dan McCort. Chapter 1. Counting Sheep. With my heels on familiar territory, my toes dangle over my 16th year on the stage's edge, where career anticipations eclipse the trials I've endured pursuing stand-up comedy. And while I have never shared this with anyone, the present occasion feels like the appropriate time. I have always had difficulty falling asleep due to an anxious mind that hoards dreams. Dreams that keep dreamers awake. My daydreams abuse me. However, one afternoon's kismet misconduct allows me to sleep at night. November 5th, 2005. Walking on West 75th Street towards Broadway, I noticed the loading door of the Beacon Theater wide open, so much so that from my point of view, the inside was indistinguishable from standing on the sidewalk. With absolutely no forethought, I ducked into the enclave and walked briskly toward the stage. Hopping the stage flotsam and debris. The ever-consummate dreamer, I stepped out past the curtain, took center stage, and soaked in the magnitude of this illustrious theater with clarity. Let's just try this on. It is where we're heading. That very night happened to be the Beacon Theater filming of George Carlin's final special, aptly named Life is Worth Losing. I was merely days into my career, but it was already part of me, for richer or poorer. You might understand why this is kept to myself. I began my pursuit of stand-up comedy in the Manhattan of 2005. The city anew is just as daunting as the profession. I've seen countless entertaining homeless people, and between us, I don't think they're making ends meet. New York is comprehensively immodest. The short buildings are tall, the tall buildings are ledges. The crazy are confrontational, the sane are slick, the natives are crafty, the intellectual bell curve in this electric metropolis skews right. Veteran comedians would tell me, New York is no place to start. I agree, because there is no good place to start doing comedy. Stand-up is painfully unforgiving from the outset. It's like asking, what's a good prison to serve 3 years? Are there any that still issue the black and white striped jumpsuits? That's a good look for a felon. There is no recommended prison, Dan. Just don't show fear. And if you go to prison for unlawful assembly and drop the soap, you might experience unlawful assembly. For a comedian, New York City is the best place in the Milky Way. It's like being a valet at the Newport Regatta. It floats someone's boat. In New York, stage time abounds. One Christmas Eve, some comedic halfwit suckered a Chinese restaurant into allowing a handful of profligate scuzzballs to harass the patronage in a language less understood. I don't have attention deficit disorder, so I'd appreciate if you reminded me how I started the sentence. These are the jokes, people. After 6 years, I would actually get 6-hour street permits for Manhattan and do comedy through a megaphone. I wanted to quit from day one, but that was the best indication that I needed to do it more. After 2 years, I could get crowds to stop and listen. I grew to love the nightmare gigs. Sometimes I feel like I have no time for easy crowds. I prefer winning a fight. Marilyn Monroe said, if you can't handle me at my worst, then you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best. I deserve stand-up comedy because I love it at its worst, probably even more than when it's kind to me. I always think I can win over an audience. It's like Selma Civil Rights without integrity, just antagonism. I strive for vocational momentum. Life on the road, overworked and booked on Christmas Eve. When I get assaulted on Christmas, the battery is not included. I'm driven to pump out authentic material at an industrial rate, with no writers, save myself, because I want to find new fans 8 or 10 albums into my career. That way, they might enjoy the significant body of material I've already created. As binge watching is clearly what the entertainment audience wants, I fully expect to have hours of content for new fans. Doing the same hour of jokes for 40 years isn't indicative of success anymore. It's lazy. I don't want to be revising right now, but I'm determined to leave a mark on our time period. And since everyone is doing so, tireless work is necessary. There's not even time to procrastinate. The deadline for success is an indeterminate threshold called my credit limit. And at that time, I have to totally give up sleeping, which I'm already limiting myself to 2 out of every 3 nights, because the line, 1 out of 2 people is called giving birth, is more clever than funny. What about Ray Charles, never saw a doctor? Maybe, but there's no seamless way to squeeze that in. The best thing about baseball is its absence from my life. Not bad. Keep pumping out words. Procrastination can only afford my quitting. I cannot fathom a comedian who would prefer a sitcom over a string of sold-out shows. Television is a brilliant medium. But if you can sell out theaters, you have it made. And you have it made after 16 years on stage. I have settled into a comedic competence that is refreshingly empowering. I have hours of material. It feels promising. However, when I do fantasize, this is the narrative. I want to be able to deliver with the courage of Lenny Bruce and the conviction of Sam Kinison. I labor to wordsmith with the likes of Dennis Miller and to abstract conceptually rivaling Stephen Wright. I wish I could deliver facial expressions with the timing of Patrice O'Neill and the absurdity of Maria Bamford. I want people to absorb a sense of humanity from my work the way they did with Richard Pryor. My cynicism takes notes from Greg Giraldo and Doug Stanhope. I work every day to create as prolifically as George Carlin. I want to dominate the stage in a way that would impress Chris Rock while remaining humbly underrated with the likes of Patton Oswalt. I wish I could bring as much genuine joy as Brian Regan while creating a show as flamboyantly theatrical as Eddie Izzard. What I truly want is my career. I would also like to take Henny Youngman's wife. In my first year on stage, I was hacking tickets for a comedy show off Broadway in New York City. This practice among comedians is known as barking. You do this to get stage time on the show. This, in New York, is part of paying your dues. The headliner for this particular show in the summer of 2005 was comedian Bill Burr. He was totally unknown at the time, and I'd venture to guess many readers still won't recognize the name. At the time, I didn't know him. All I knew was that his name sounded like Will Burr, and I was irritated that I had to solicit for what I assumed was going to be a hack. Shit act. Nevertheless, my job was to coerce and manipulate pedestrians into the show. Headliner Bill Burr. You've seen him on The Chappelle Show. I was most likely drunk at the time, but I vividly remember everything about the response I got from one 20-something Latino kid with a flat brim hat cocked sideways. If it's not Dave Chappelle, who cares? I proceeded to bark at some pedestrian pigeons and sat to watch the show. The venue was gorgeous. It was called Comedy on Columbus. Like most things comedy, it lasted about 4 weeks. The venue capacity was 450 comfortably. This night, all our barkers drew in about 14 people. The venue was as empty as my unfounded opinions about our headliner for the evening. I was by far the greenest comedian on the show. Nevertheless, I proceeded to watch veteran New York City comedians after seasoned professional fail miserably or tank. It wasn't the fault of the showman. A huge vacant room lacks the intimacy requisite for stand-up comedy. Something changed in me that evening. 2 hours into the laughless evening, Bill Burr took the stage, and he lit the room up with inordinate laughter for an unceasing half hour. I've seen over 2,000 comedy shows to date. I've seen Bill Burr over a dozen times. This was the best performance I have ever witnessed live by a stand-up comedian. What I've come to terms with is something I cannot now deny. That is what a real comedian looks like. It's a goal I'm incapable of achieving. Even if I do achieve this, I can't, because if I accept this, there's only one conclusion, which I don't care to endure. I'm delusional, and it's time to retire, because there's no new gradations left in this ascent. Here we find the true breadth of this pursuit, for better or worse. Worse, considering stand-up comedy at its pinnacle is a carnivorous, empty, gaudy, glittered showroom where everyone in attendance leaves with a short terminal memory of some guy whose name rhymes with Will Burr that lasts until the night's last call shot of well whiskey, and one writer continues to overanalyze the event of the detriment of his ambition. Better, if it's not Dave Chappelle, it's now the legendary Bill Burr. Bill Burr? Yes. The Bill Burr of Carnegie Hall 2011. You just walked past a basement ticket, a rendezvous to witness the future of an art form with the enigmatic complexity of the behavioral sciences and a rhetorical inertia that would impress Adolf Hitler. That's what you missed. The kids who wanted Dave Chappelle embodied precisely what Bill Burr has ascribed to as gold diggers, the people who show up at the finish line, not the race. You could have witnessed Bill Burr in his grappling days, but no, you would rather wait and pay $75 for balcony seats after the showman has reached up the top, when he no longer needs to fight. The comedian relative to your field of vision occupying one overpriced pixel. The experience of that night was the most impressive show of competence in the field of stand-up comedy. Anyone who tries a hand in this venue can fully appreciate how difficult it is to generate comedic momentum in an empty room. Those are the dues. Maybe, just maybe, one of our readers will one day play Carnegie Hall, but not without enduring the dregs. That's the real work of the stand-up comedian. I am roughly the same age as AIDS, but not nearly as popular. At the age of 29, I contacted my doctor about my acute suicidal alcoholism. I had been passing blood for some time. 10 years earlier, I had planned to be a doctor. I was salutatorian, which is Latin for no one cares because you're not valedictorian. College GPA 3.98. Financee. Best friend. Suddenly neither. For the only feasible reason I would lose them simultaneously at the age of 20. Vodka AM, vodka PM, from 20 to 29. At 29, the doctor told me that I was close to organ failure. I moved back to my hometown of Syracuse, New York at the age of 28. Immediately, the realization that there were fewer opportunities to get on stage set in. The upside was that the amount of time comedians were allotted per set was much longer. Within a year of my time in Syracuse, I came in first of 48 in the Unforgettable Comedy Contest. I played a full theater in the Boston Comedy Festival. In 2013, I filmed my first hour special, Audible Toxicology, which was endorsed by Netflix comedian Tom Segura. Dan, you're a dark, gifted, hilarious writer. So talented. I love this special. Art, done well, has an audience. Things of importance, by nature, have consequence. The artist ripples many sociological phenomena in the wake of an attuned populace. Motivation, opinion, information, solidarity. Impacting the collective consciousness of humanity is as consequential as human endeavors can be. My resolute assertion is that stand-up is the platform least corrupted by social psychological biases, because the musicality of comedy is intrinsically contingent upon a genuine reflexive response from the audience. Laughter. Simply put, when someone doesn't like your gallery showing, they eat your cheese, compliment you, and purchase nothing. When the same individual cares not for your comedy, they say, "I don't like you." Let us tally the recent consequences of comedy. In 2005, Bill Cosby's stature as an iconic comedian proved enough to scuttle the testimony and 12-person corroboration of Cosby's scandalous illicit behavior. Ironically, the matter only came to consequence when comedian Hannibal Buress addressed it in his act. It is a great irony that the very medium that silenced the crime sowed the seeds that exposed the criminal. When considering comedy, we are attending to a medium with the power both to conceal the reprehensible and expose the untouchable. At the risk of sounding melodramatic, stand-up comedy is the reason I still wake up these days. Comedy and comedy writing engineered mental clarity and determination. This work ethic brought me to Syracuse, New York for my last 5 redemptive years. I love Syracuse comedy for its camaraderie. The scene required an adaptation to longer sets, half hours and full hours, which have been an indispensable luxury in support of my development. I began tutoring and writing for other comedians. It soon became clear that I needed to write a book on stand-up with effective rhetorical devices that I found to be conspicuously absent from the prevailing literature. Untold techniques such as, if you take a well-scripted bit and intentionally disrupt the appropriate syntax, its delivery will sound as though you're just talking off the top of your head, which plays well with the audience, the illusion of spontaneity. I am truly humbled by the attention of even a reader of my writing. I always take it seriously. I'm continually contending for the resonance of my 20,000 hours of writing, for momentum, for the ability to extend validity and spirit. Recognition provides the sustenance for inspiration, the oxygen of creative enterprising. I truly desire to further the inspiration I derive from candid expression. Since Abraham Lincoln, never has so much gone on between the desk and the stage. I work for the opportunity to offer my contribution to a rich cultural tapestry, whether it be at the keypad or behind the microphone. My work has, does, and will continue to testify to this, because contributing to the cultural zeitgeist is personally profound and culturally significant. And my life today is why this is so. George Carlin filmed his final special the same day I burgled a glimpse into what it would be like to play the illustrious Beacon Theater. He began the special by announcing that he was 341 days sober. I quit drinking myself to death to relinquish any hindrances in my ability to be expressive. I don't know whether this is all ironic or poignant that George Carlin happened to name the special Life is Worth Losing. It is difficult to sleep at night when your dreams are so aggressive that you're breaking the law just to express yourself to 3,000 vacant seats, and you quit terminally degenerating your body just to be heard. Maybe after the tickets are claimed and you've made your living being listened to, life is worth losing. I'll know when I'm done counting sheep.